he's doing a lot with virtually nothing.
Right.
Like the script for this might as well have been like a single piece of paper.
And he's just eating off of every line. He is not late for his shift at the cunt factory. He just is serving.
Oh, I thought for the fact that shirt would probably be banned from our TeePublic store. That would make
I would love to lay claim, but
shirt.
I am repeating a TikTok thing. So
I don't think I've ever heard you say that word. My goodness.
No, and we'll see if it stays in the episode. It'll either be right up front or all the way at the end or right where I said it. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, diet times here. That's right. We're talking about 1931's Dracula, the movie that started it all on Kill by Kill. Well, greetings and salutations, and it's your old pal Patrick Hamilton coming to you once again from Carfax Abbey. This is the Kill by Kill podcast, where we are dedicated to celebrating the least discussed component of any horror film, the characters. And for season 5, this is the debut of our discussion of vampires or Draculas, however you want to say it, with 1931's Universal Studios original Dracula, in the hopes that a young socialite's untimely end is just the beginning of the jokes we might make at her expense. And as always, there's only one person I trust to let me know when the sun's going down on our boat to London. The one, the only, Gina Radcliffe. How you doing today, Gina?
Hang on, I can't see. I have this beam of light that's shining directly across my eyes.
Oh, now I can't think of anything because all I'm looking at is the beam of light that's across your eyes.
Yeah, it's just, it's supposed to make me look very dramatic.
It is very dramatic
because it's making my pupils about the size of pinpoints at this point. So yeah, I guess I would look pretty dramatic.
The size of pinpoints.
I'm doing a weird thing with my hand.
It looks like a fork that never bends, and you're pointing at me, and even when it hits a pillow, the fingers don't bend.
I got you.
I'm in your thrall. This is Dracula, baby. And honestly, when we started this show, I never thought we'd be talking about Dracula. Not in a million damn years. And yet, here we are, because there's just no way we can talk about vampires at any other decade or point without discussing this movie. That being said, as much as I love many things about Dracula, and as much as this is the movie that hypnotized me into wanting to learn more, that drew me into the monster-loving kid that I was, it's not what you call a nonstop boogie in terms of moviedom, Gina.
No, it's really not. The interesting thing about this particular version of Dracula, and I didn't see the movie in its entirety until I was an adult, but this image of Dracula is so baked into American culture. I mean, this is basically our grandparents' idea of what a vampire looks like, even now,
it's our great grandparents' idea of what a vampire looks like.
If you buy a Halloween costume of Dracula, you're still going to have the slicked back hair. You're going to have the cape. You're going to have the little medallion around your neck. And the funny thing is, even though it's loosely, let's emphasize loosely based on the book, that this image of Dracula was created entirely for the play and this movie. Right. My favorite bit of trivia about Dracula, and I'm sure I've mentioned it on this before, is that if you read the book and you pay attention to how Count Dracula is described, the image that would probably most likely come to your head is Sam Elliott. He's described as an older man with a thick, bushy mustache. And I'm like, well, if Sam Elliott walked into a room, I'm pretty sure he would have almost everybody in his thrall as well. So that works too. But yeah, this version of this, this sort of refined, you mysterious European was for the play and sort of created around Bela Lugosi.
Right. I mean, he wasn't the first person to originate the role. We have to say that up front. He wasn't even the person that Bram Stoker, who aimed for this to be on the stage, wanted to be in this role. That being said, he's the one person who kind of crystallizes it, because when they put it on the stage and they dress him in this outfit, what they're going for is like a hokey stage magician, because so much of when stage presentations talked about the macabre or the supernatural, they always played it off of like, no, he's just playing a vampire. He's not really a vampire. And so it's actually a swerve that Dracula is a legit blood-sucking vampire who can transform into a bat. That is not something that every audience was expecting it when they saw it on the stage. So part of it is, in its original incantation, to get the audience to think, well, this guy isn't going to end up being a fucking vampire. And then wait a second, he really is. That, which in and of itself is such a complete 180 to how anyone would approach this material now.
Right. I mean, the problem with the movie is yeah, and I will absolutely concede it is one of, if not the most influential horror movie of all time. Yeah. It is you can really see where that Hays Code gutted this film. I mean, it's like, it's not exciting. Yeah. It's not scary. It's not there's not so much as a single whiff of eroticism in it, which, if you read the book, it's surprising how, like, the first scene in which Jonathan Harker encounters the brides, they are basically about to give him a blowjob.
Yeah,
they are. Like,
they're giving him a Ghostbusters blowjob. Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
they are moving down my chest, and it's like, all right, I see where this is going, baby. Okay, and he's like scared, but also really turned on at the same time. But like, that's just like, no, we're not doing any of that. That will not do.
Yes, and yet the film was also so scared that the audience will perceive that the Count is sexually attractive to Harker, or that there's any chemistry between them, that it chooses to have the bride's turn. Well, it's Renfield in this version. The bride's turn Renfield, or not even fully turn, just like give him a snack. Just put him under the original thrall. Just give him a taste, baby.
Yeah, like enough where he's not, he doesn't have like vampire powers himself, but he's sort of under his control.
Yes. And as such, in the Spanish language version, which was filmed at night, because this was the habit at the time, not just at Universal, but at many studios, was you filmed the English language version during the day, and at night a new crew would come in and they would use the same sets and the same setups to produce a Spanish language version of that same thing. It was just easier at the time than dubbing or anything along those lines. That was just more technical and harder to do. And the other element of it is sound was so fucking new at the time. Not everyone had a sound, a sound setup inside of their movie theater. So this is half set up to also be a silent movie. So there's that element too. But I 100% agree with you in terms of its influence. There's just things that are so baked into this that they become default. They are what you are either trying to do something that Bela Lugosi did in your own way, or you're decidedly not doing Bela Lugosi.
Right.
And for decades and decades and decades, those are your choices in terms of how your vampire operates. And most people attempt to do, well, it can't be that hard to do what Bela Lugosi did. And then you watch what they did and you're like, holy shit, Bela Lugosi's got a lot going fucking on here. Like, there's a reason why he's the default Dracula.
Yeah, the problem is with this particular movie is that the sole actors bringing the juice to this is Bela Lugosi and Dwight Frye.
Yes.
who plays Renfield. Did you watch Renfield, the one with Nicolas Cage and
I have not yet, for fear that we might do it in the future, and I didn't want to watch it without taking notes on it. I'm sorry to say.
It's it's all right. It's fine.
Yeah,
but Nicholas Hoult recreates the scene for a shot in which Renfield is coming out of the I guess he's in the whatever they call the area of a ship where they store luggage and all. The hull, yeah. And he's just got this like maniacal grin directly at the camera. And he recreates that in such a great shot, but it's such a memorable scene here because he's just doing something else entirely. And every version of Renfield, every single version of Renfield has been exactly like that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it sets the tone, and then it goes beyond that because before this, creepy places were created by angles and lighting. And then this movie introduced the concept that spiders be going crazy in that piece. And after that, cobwebs become a thing. It's just a thing people assume is in a creepy castle. And that only comes from Dracula. That's how wildly influential this movie is. There was a world before Dracula was released and a world after it. And I think in a way, because this is our introduction to vampires, I think we need to, while it is not the original vampire novel, it is of course the thing that kind of sets the standard. So let's go back a little bit. Let's talk about our man Bram and his original novel. While this movie is based on the Bram Stoker novel, it's even more so based on the presentation produced by Hamilton Dean. And oddly, Universal had to pay 2 other stage versions off just to avoid lawsuits. So it's like based on a whole bunch of like the title card is like long in terms of, but based on this and this and that, just covering all their fucking bases because of what happened with Nosferatu. But Universal kind of had Dracula in its drafts folder for a long time. The thing is, founder and owner Carl Laemmle hated horror, which is a little weird considering how much one might think when you think monster movies and classic horror, you're thinking Universal. He didn't care for it personally, but in respect to that, he was fine with what was referred to at the time as the macabre, which is just strange shit happening. And my apologies in advance because these ideas are not mine. They are the ideas of Carl Laemmle. But he was fine with elements of the disfigured, in his words. The Hunchback of the Notre Dame, the Phantom of the Opera, like stuff that featured Lon Chaney and crazy looking makeups, because they were still human beings. They didn't represent the supernatural. Everything was fine, except for this one person who just had something different about them that made them occasionally want to murder or kidnap, a lady and take them up to the top of a church. So, and I'll say this as an explanation for this, but not an excuse. There was a public fascination at the time with disfigurement post World War I, and that's been documented over and over again. People who survived near fatal injury from that conflict were saved by new medical advancements, and that captivated people. They were interested in it because they had not seen it before. So, and this wasn't just something they read either, because there's that guy in town who was a veteran of World War I who had insane scars, or maybe came home with one less arm than when he left. And he was a focus of constant conversation by everyone around him. And in typical Hollywood fashion, Laemmle exploited that. Horror is a dark mirror of society. It's a safe place to explore what we fear and are fascinated about in society. And so he was fine about that.
Yeah, I mean, and you see, and I mean, honestly, there are modern filmmakers who dip into that well.
Yes.
Ari Aster, for instance, got some criticism for featuring I mean, in the film, the character is supposed to be the product of incest, but there is a disfigured character in Midsummer who is treated as some sort of like like an oracle in this village, and I know that people frowned on that and thought that could have been handled in a different way, and I don't disagree.
Yeah, it's in the miasma. I think we're better at it, and I think we come at it from better places nowadays. But it is just again, it is a reflection of our society, and so it doesn't always excuse it, but it is an explanation for it. So speaking of, maybe we should talk a little bit about how Dracula is probably a symbolic representation of Bram Stoker's repressed homosexuality.
Oh, certainly. Yeah. Obviously. Which, probably, the vast majority of vampire stories are, somebody working out their repressed sexuality in one way or another, because there's always some, forbidden aspect to it. So either you're repressed because you are gay and cannot act upon that, or you are in a situation where you might have feelings for another person but can't act upon it for whatever reason. So you basically embody these feelings into a monster who is not quite human, but also has a sort of power to enchant other people.
Exactly. There's a transgressive nature to it. There's an exchange of fluids.
There's penetration.
It's about penetration. That's all baked into the cake. And what I find interesting about Bram Stoker's approach to this isn't so much that he committed it to paper. It's how it all kind of turns around on him while he's alive and at the top of his game. Because my guy went through his school levels at a time when, quote unquote, romantic friendships were encouraged between men, between women. It was this kind of safe space where you could be in lovish with somebody and be just overly fascinated and always by their side. But it was more like trying to allow you to have someone who could listen to you and feel you emotionally without fully committing to the marriage level.
It was, I think it was probably what we would call today having a soulmate.
Yes.
Where you could have a bond, you could have that sort of quasi romantic bond with someone, but not, marry them or even be in a open relationship with them, or not even have sex with them. Just, you have like this sort of like, I've known this person my whole life kind of bond with a person.
And it probably ran the gamut, but it was at a time when honestly society felt like you don't have to be a man until you're married. You don't have to represent, male aspects of your personality until you reach the point of adulthood. And you were just allowed to be a flouncy flauderall, whether or not you were a boy or a girl. And it really gets shut down after the Oscar Wilde scandal creates a wave of homophobia across Europe. When Bram wrote the novel with the hopes of it becoming a play, it was because he had a crush on Henry Irving, who was a giant star of the stage, who had long flowing hair and a very luscious mustache. Maybe a little Sam Elliott, if you were. So, also, one of my favorite thing about this is that they had a reading of an early play version of it that Bram Stoker was involved with, and they did it at Irving's Theater. And rumor has it, when Irving did hear a part of that read through, he is told to have bellowed "dreadful" and walked out.
Oh, that must have broken his heart.
Right. And I mean, like, everyone knows what Dracula is, and like 1 in 1,000 knows who fucking Henry Irving is. So
Yeah, who's laughing? Who's laughing at heaven now, Henry?
yeah, guess who chose poorly, motherfucker? You could have been Dracula, but no.
You could have been like, yeah, that's me. I'm Dracula. That's about me. He wrote that about me, you know. I don't, you know, we also have to mention that this is coming, you know, we're still, you know, it's getting near the end, but we're still in the Victorian era.
Yes.
Where
Yes.
everything, the way you dressed, the way you lived, who you married, what you did was, you know, based you deeply in repression.
Right.
And you, if you had you any, you know, other, you know, you weird, you know, quote unquote weird sexual desires beyond, you know, sex in the dark with your goodly wife, you know, once a week, you went and found, you know, some lady of the evening or, you know, boy of the evening to take care of that, and you did not talk about it.
No.
So
and
yeah,
Oscar Wilde did, and that it got him caught out.
Right.
And
He had the audacity.
Fucking prison.
Right. He had the audacity to be open about his proclivities.
And when that gets shut down, everything gets shut down in terms of that. It's a fucking sea change. And so Stoker ends up, you know, going on to say some pretty horrifically homophobic things in the aftermath of the Wilde trial. But obviously that's projection and fear coming from him, as, you know, his friend is shipped off to prison for simply being too fucking fabulous. And so he's
fabulousness in the first degree.
Right. And he's, you know, this is an outlet for him where he writes about this fabulous man in this faraway land, and you show up and it's like, hey, let's have dinner together. And, you know, he's working some shit out. In the sense, like, he's projecting himself as Harker, you know, as this journey to a strange, foreboding castle to meet up with a hot older man who likes all the things you like real estate purchases and contracts and drinking your fluids. It's not a big leap. You know, and even, you know, Mina and Lucy's friendship has that sort of, there's a modern girl thing happening here where they even pick it up in other versions of it, where it's like she's using a typewriter and, you know, they talk about everything together, and maybe there's some roaming hands under the bed covers energy. And that's part of the allure here. Like, it's the reason why this book has been a constant seller since its fucking publication.
Yeah, it's there's, you know, a lot of takeaways you could get from it, and they're all correct.
Yes. It's fascinating how many different ways you can slice this particular onion, and all of them have crazy layers. So it's like, it's not all homoerotic good times, people. We also have to contend with not only the novel, but the play and this movie's delightful xenophobia.
You took the word right out of my mouth. I was going to say, we also have to mention the xenophobia.
You know, Dracula can be viewed through many lenses, but sadly, one of the more prominent is that he is an outside plague carrier, to put that in dick fingers. Like, he sneaks past borders to invade the pure lands of Britain. You know, he purchases the biggest house in town via shady real estate deals and just happens to start sucking the life out of these innocent white men and women. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Listen, he's working a lot of shit out with this book.
He really is. And then you might be saying, but Patrick, Dracula is very white. He might even be described as the palest of the boys, one might say. But all the better to smuggle the racism in. And also, certainly in the case of Bela Lugosi play him, yes,
there was a time when Eastern European, which was what he was Hungarian, was not considered the same as, you know, the good people of you know, England and Ireland and Wales. That was a little different.
Yes. And as you know, there's a lot of things mixed into that. Obviously you have the there's just all that sort of anti-Semitic and anti-foreigner stuff that's just creeping in around it. They're foreign. They're not like us. Therefore, something must be wrong with them, because how can they not live in our current, well-kept society, or how we view society should run? They don't even have the decency to speak English. And you're like, most of the world does not speak English. I don't know that why is this fucking default? It's white supremacy, everybody. It's just the core of it.
Yeah, they don't drink our food. They don't eat our food. They don't drink our drinks.
They don't eat our drink.
They have these strange customs.
Yes. And then they show up and they totally snack on your women, is how this kind of goes. And in there is another layer we like to call, can capitalism be working against me? Yes, that's right, everyone. This is kind of a colonialism bites back story, where if you start making deals with people from outside lands and allow them to move into your borders, they're just going to start doing what they want to do, like normal people. This is a character, everyone. This is obviously not my ideas. And as a result, you have a weird, oh God help me, great replacement theory shit going on here. It's just fucking terrible.
Well, that's why there are so many, if we were to do even like a fraction of how many vampire themed movies there are, we would be talking about nothing else.
Yes.
Because you can apply the concept of a vampire in so many countless ways, and with so many metaphors. You can make it a metaphor for drug addiction or alcoholism. You can make it a metaphor for puberty. You can make it a metaphor for falling in love for the first time or the last time, depending on how badly it goes. There are so many different interpretations you could come at with the concept of draining somebody or having this overwhelming animalistic need for something, whether it's blood or flesh or sex or whatever. I'm rewatching for the third time Midnight Mass. I'm writing it. I'm writing each episode by episode for my newsletter.
And everyone should be reading it.
Well, thank you. I am enjoying it, even though I'm at the part now where I start crying roughly about every 10 minutes.
Sure.
But I just completed the episode in which you figure out that spoilers if you haven't seen Midnight Mass yet, a certain character is in fact a vampire. And he is dealing with this overwhelming hunger, and it's making him angry. And when he does eventually, you accidentally at first kill someone, and he's drinking from them. Someone asks him, "Do you feel guilty about this?" He says, "No," because he had a hunger. He had to satiate it. That person happened to have the bad luck to be there. He didn't mean for them to get hurt, but he took advantage of the situation. And you find that very powerful.
Yes. It literally goes back to any number of interpretations, but you could certainly call that, in a sense, a very problem with late stage capitalism. Like, he may be a bloodsucker, but how dare he suck our blood as a reaction in this movie?
Right. Yeah. And the tone of this movie is, how dare you?
I mean, this is something we do to other people. And how dare you use the rules and methods of colonialism against us? It just, holy hell. Media analysis is fun, people. Everyone should try doing it. You just have to be literate enough to give it a whirl.
It is. Watch your shit with an open mind.
Yes.
Yeah, don't be like, why do we got to, why do we have to attach a morality tale to everything? Because a lot of movies are written with, a deeper meaning in mind.
Yes. And not to mention the fact that horror at its core is a reflection of society's fears. Therefore, it's inherently political every single time. The comedies, the romance, the westerns, all of them All of them are political on some level, because when it works, when it's right, when it's actually coming at it from the sense that it wants to be a horror movie, it is a reflection of something. That's what resonates with y'all. So let's get back to the movie a little bit, and let's talk a little bit about fail sons. How about a non-fail son, Carl Laemmle Jr.? He's the studio head's junior, as it were. And he's really pushing for the company to develop Bram Stoker's Dracula into a movie from the novel. He snaps up the right to the Dean stage play, even though they don't have a ton of money coming in. He's saying, this is an investment. You need to have seen how audiences reacted to this play in New York, in Hollywood. They are freaking out about it, and we can take advantage of that in this medium and take it everywhere faster than the stage play can move. And so originally, Laemmle Jr. saw Dracula as a very opulent and grandiose version of Stoker's novel. Because it's film, you can do a lot more things than you can do on the stage. But speaking of the ultimate bloodsucker of capitalism, the stock market crash of 29 happens. And then the subsequent Great Depression happens. And the budget of this film shrinks massively. And you can see this in the final film, because there's a lot of money spent up front on Dracula's castle and Carfax Abbey. And the rest of the sets are kind of reused stately rooms from melodramas. There's a lot of let's all gather in one room and talk scenes in this film.
Yeah.
It kind of becomes the Hamilton Dean stage version of the story, simply by financial need. And originally, Todd Browning comes to Universal with the promise of Dracula kind of floating out there. He works a lot with Lon Chaney, the man of 1,000 faces, and they kind of dangle Dracula out to bring him and Chaney into the fold. And his interest in the movie really starts to wane once Lon Chaney dies of cancer in 1930. And he's like, well, I can't see anyone being able to do what Dracula needs to do if it's not Lon Chaney. But the contracts have been signed. So he's kind of hemmed in to this. So there's a tension involved in this movie where the director kind of doesn't want to be there, but he's also brimming with ideas that he hasn't given away quite yet. So, and there's the other part of Todd Browning we need to talk about, which is he is spending a lot of time drinking his ass off.
As many people were post-depression.
Yes, it was a thing that people did. It was one of the driving factors behind the shutoff of alcohol sales by the federal government. And Browning persists, though. There's other elements to Browning that make him a weird choice for this, in that he doesn't really like talkies as a medium, right? His greatest successes before this are coming from silent movies. He is a very talented visual artist at communicating things without having to speak. But if the film is now involving talking, he's going to be forced to communicate his needs ahead of time to the cast and the crew. And he really wasn't prepared to do that a lot of the time because he had a serious substance abuse problem. It's not to say he didn't have talent. He has a ton of it, and it's on display here. But drawing it out of him takes work and it takes time. And this movie has a budget that it has to hit. Otherwise, the whole of Universal Studios is going to crumble underneath them. He's a very good director, but as technology advanced, so did his alcoholism. So Browning's kind of struggling to keep up. That being said, you cannot take away a lot of the directorial feats of this film from Todd Browning just because he was a tough guy to love and he sometimes slurred his speech a lot. Dracula is, when you watch it now, you're going to notice some things that just don't feel like a modern movie in any way, shape, or form. It just holds scenes forever. It just plants a camera and lets people talk. And you're like, holy shit. Let's have some Is there dynamics here? And no, there are
No.
those dynamics are few and far between.
It's very everything. And again, I blame this solely on the Hays Code. Everything is very, very muted. It's funny when you read about when this movie first was released, and that ladies were passing out in horror in the theater, and I'm like, and yeah, I realize I'm slightly jaded, but like I get people throwing up or running screaming out of the theater during The Exorcist. I get that. Yeah. I can see where that would be possible, or freaking out over the chest burster scene in Alien. That I understand, but the shot of Bela Lugosi staring intently at the camera, I don't understand why that had women just fluttering to the ground in a heap, unless it was, oh, he's so handsome, I mean, and maybe it was, and men attributed to, oh, she must be really scared of him.
Yeah, and this is like, he looks good here.
No, he does, but like I don't find this particularly scary.
Yeah, I think it's more that it evokes scary ideas that just hadn't been seen on the screen quite yet. Because, like I said before, there's a lot, there's horror movies up till this point that deal with the macabre, and they always pull their punches. There are no real ghosts. There are no real vampires. Like Midnight, what is the Lon Chaney one where he's got the pointy teeth and the top hat?
London After Midnight.
London After Midnight. Unfinished film. In that movie, reportedly, because we don't have the whole of it, he's not really a vampire. He's putting that on just to murder people. Like it's like a mask for him or whatever. And a lot of people just pulling punches. And Nosferatu is the first, movie to put it out there. Like, no, this is a fucking vampire. But not that many people see Nosferatu because it gets shut down very quickly, and all the copies were supposed to be destroyed. So when Dracula hits the screens, this is the first time you're told this guy's undead. He lives on blood. He can hypnotize people, and we're going to show it to you. And then they, as Hays Code as they can, show it to you. And I think that scandalized people who just hadn't seen it. And the same thing with the stage production. People hadn't seen it with their own eyes, and they're confronted with it, and they're like, oh my God, this is freaking me out, and I'm kind of turned on. And this is a real weird mix.
I mean, I suppose if you put yourself in the mindset of, what kind of entertainment people were getting during that era, that, yeah, this certainly, startling. I can understand. Yeah. But, the interesting thing is, despite so much of Dracula's look, still being synonymous with Dracula as a character, is he doesn't have fangs. He doesn't have like weird eyes. Like all these things sort of came later in different versions, in this sort of amalgamum of Dracula. But in retrospect, you add them mentally. Right. And he's just a guy here. He's just a guy.
Yeah. He's just a guy in a smart looking tux, He
looks like a magician, basically. Like you said earlier, he looks like a magician.
Exactly. He's got a theater cape, it's a whole thing. He's putting on a show. And so in a sense, like he's doing it to be taken seriously, but not taken seriously. It's complicated. The other element that you'll notice right away if you watch the original version is that the film doesn't really have so much of a soundtrack. It has the opening song, but that's lifted from a symphony.
It's Swan Lake. It's Swan Lake.
Yeah. But everything else just happens with no musical interlude at all. There's no build. There's no, oh my God, I'm in Dracula's castle, or, oh, this ship is going to crash. And then shit just happens just with, sound effects and onstage noise. There's no accompaniment to it unless you are watching the 90s Philip Glass orchestration. And that, I think, helps bridge the gap for people. If you're going to watch this for the first time, my suggestion is, if the Philip Glass version is available, to watch that one because it is a softer landing than just cold watching scene after scene of just shit happening with zero musical accompaniment. Like your brain will have a very hard time with it.
Yeah. It's there are different ways you can watch this, and have it be a more visceral experience, but just watching the plain version I was originally seen. If you haven't seen it yet, you're probably going to be a little disappointed because again, not a lot happens, and when things do happen, they are invariably off screen. My favorite aspect of it is how you see you've got the typical Mina has been changed. Or is it? I think they know they reversed the characters at some point, but Mina has
talking about Lucy or Mina.
Yeah, she's been changed. She is Dracula's bride.
Yeah.
Harker, and we'll get to Harker in a few minutes.
Oh boy.
He's recruited call him Van Halen. Imagine that. Imagine David Lee Roth.
They've recorded Van Halen 1, but not Van Halen 2. So they're still living in Pasadena, but they're living the Hollywood Sunset Boulevard lifestyle.
I just want to see like in a Victorian setting, David Lee Roth coming in with the spandex and the 37 scars. All right, what's going on here? Just running him through the microphone
for the undead.
Just running him through the microphone stand.
Just high kicking shit. 1,000 scars off that one fucking microphone.
Van Helsing.
Yeah, like wow, that bassist is kind of big, but he sings really high. That's a lot of tom-tom drums on that drum kit. All things you associate with 1931's Dracula.
Absolutely. Anyway, when he recruits Van Helsing to help him slay the Eastern European menace, he goes and finds Dracula's coffin, and then you cut to Jonathan and Mina in another part of the house, and then you hear this sound, and then Van Helsing comes out, he's like, well, he's dead, and then that's at the end of the movie. That's literally the end of the movie.
Well, they cut off 15 minutes. There's 15 minutes after this that actually existed at one point, but they're like, no, just send people home. That's all they need. They're gonna freak out enough. This is all they can take. So yeah, she basically is it over? He's like, I guess, and then cut to black, spinning globe, a Universal International film.
You compare the time to say Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein. Now those are fucking movies.
Those are movies.
Yeah. Those are compelling. They're scary. They're heartfelt. They're dramatic, and they. I don't know if satisfying is the word, but they end in a very dramatic fashion. Whereas here it's just well, we did it.
Whale's a better communicator of story in a more direct way. He has the same visual panache, but also Browning's kind of getting fucked with too. It's not all his fault. You can tell because when you watch, here's the other thing. You can tell when you watch the Spanish version, which one the Universal execs are harping over and giving notes and saying, cut this, leave that in, get rid of that, change this. Because the Spanish version is a full almost 2 hours. It's at least a half an hour longer. And it's full of stuff that both Browning or Universal cuts. And while technically there's a lot of cool stuff they do in it, like the camera moves a lot more and there's more intercutting going on, and you've got a way better Mina, as it were. She's not named Mina. She's Eva. Lupita Tovar plays her, and Lupita Tovar fucking rules. But there's one thing that the Spanish language version is never going to have, and that is Bela fucking Lugosi. Because if you ever wanted to see Dracula without Bela, you watch the Spanish language version, and Carlos Villareras version of Dracula, and you're like, oof la doof. That is a swing and a miss, my friend.
Yeah, I think if you kind of combine the two, you have a superior Dracula movie overall.
Oh, if Lupita Tovar was Mina in the English language version, it would be a real banger, because you would have a back and forth between those two. And yeah, part of the issue here with the English language version is that Helen Chandler as Mina is a fucking doorstop.
Well, that's the thing. Could we talk about the wet noodle in the room?
Oh, absolutely. We're a character podcast. We got to talk about it.
All right. So, you know me, and other people who know me personally will know that I am the world's biggest Bram Stoker's Dracula fan.
As well, you should be.
I love that movie very much. I do not at all think it's so bad it's good.
Whoever is saying that doesn't enjoy movies. They want to just crap on shit.
I think it is a genuine masterpiece. I don't know if it's my favorite vampire movie. It is certainly by far my favorite rendition of Dracula. Mm-hmm. But as you might recall, and people still like to bring it up because they think they're very clever and making the same joke and observation that people have been making since time immemorial. Mm-hmm. A lot of people found fault with one Keanu Reeves' performance as Jonathan Harker. That he was boring, that he struggled with his accent. Not untrue. Mm-hmm. He tried. God love him. He did try.
So does Winona Ryder.
Right. They're both. When you have the only Americans in a cast full of extremely British actors, you're gonna find yourself lacking. We can't all be Meryl Streep with the accents here.
Yes.
But anyway, from the start, I always felt a little defensive about it. Not that I'm any kind of expert on Dracula as a story, but I got what he was trying to do, and I understood. He read that fucking book, and he watched that fucking movie, and he is doing, Jonathan Harker as this sort of impotent man who's watching some suave foreigner come in and steal his woman. And he doesn't know how to react to it except resorting to violence. Because he knew that if he had to win her back on his charms alone, it would not work.
No, he's not going to bring her back because the lovin's so good.
They have no. The only reason they get like church tongue when they get married is because she's already been spending time with Dracula. Yes. She's already all of Twitter. Mm-hmm. So it's entirely possible she's not even thinking about Harker when they're kissing.
She knows that Harker is not going to push his buttons, but she also knows that society will not allow her to be in love with this Nosferatu from foreign lands. Like, they're not going to be able to just love and exist at night. So maybe she'll play at this, and Harker's a quote unquote good man, and that's quote unquote good enough.
Right.
And she's learned a few things. Maybe she can transfer that. It's part of the modern woman trope that film is playing with that's in the novel. It's the reason why it's called Bram Stoker's Dracula, everybody. And yeah, you cannot say that there's, at least that I've seen, that there's been a version of Harker in a Dracula adaptation who's like, well, there's a guy who's just going to take your breath away.
They're always weenies. They're always hopeless weenies.
It's not a choice between one awesome guy and this supernatural creature who you could never say no to, even if you wanted to. It's the fact that even though he's hypnotizing you into it, you kind of want to get hypnotized. There's no way with Harker. He's just a guy.
Right.
Who's good enough.
One thing I liked was, I don't know if you saw a couple of years ago, Netflix did a version of Dracula. It was like a 3-part miniseries.
Yeah.
In the end, I had a lot of issues with it, but
Oh, you mean the hour 3 didn't really captivate you? I won't give it away because I really do need people to see that. It was going fine up until a certain point, and then it just goes to show you can take a left. It doesn't mean everyone else in the car is going to turn that way.
Once again, we are absolutely on the same wavelength. Because it was absolutely episode 3 that completely lost me when it decided at the last minute, well, we actually are gonna make this a love story after all.
Yeah.
Even though, you know,
amongst many other decisions.
Right. Even though like in episode 1, like Dracula's tossing you severed heads at nuns and all. But what I was trying to say is that I like that they basically just killed the shit out of Jonathan Harker like the first episode, and it was gruesome too. Like he is telling he's doing the whole telling the story about how he went to the castle and he had these strange encounters, and this bizarre man, he's coming and he's going to wreak havoc, and then Dracula is like in his body and basically like tears through him and is like, I'm here already. And it's so like I said, I had a lot of faults with that, but I almost fell out of my seat. I did not see that coming in the slightest. And I'm like, get fucking Harker out of the way right from the beginning. I love it. I love it.
It's the beautiful thing about adaptation is you take what works for the story you're trying to tell and you leave everything else behind. And you don't see it coming. Spoiler alert for everyone. And that's not the last thing you don't see coming. There's so many things you don't see coming, you'll almost never run out of them. It's worth it for the experience. Maybe it will work for you, but I appreciate it for the many swings it takes. Speaking of swings, let us return back to 1931 because there's another element of this film that must be discussed, and it influences not only how well this film turns out, but the rest of cinema, because behind the cinematographer's chair is one Karl Freund, and he was instrumental in the rise of German expressionism with films like The Golem and Metropolis. So already those are probably 2 images our audience probably has at the drop of a hat. And so he is key here at both lighting Dracula's castle, Carfax Abbey, the crypt underneath both, like all these massive 2-story sets he makes come alive in both. While other people are listed as a cinematographer for the Spanish language version, it's the same lighting setup. They didn't change the lighting. So it comes down to Karl Freund really creating these images. There's not much he can do in like a living room set, but he makes the most of everything else. And like they are the best parts of these films in my opinion. He is a collaborator here. He's not working alone. He and Browning make for an incredible team. And if you ever want to see what Karl Freund does behind the camera, my suggestion to everyone is to watch The Mummy from 33, 34. It happens right after this. And boy, after the first 5 minutes, that movie is a wash.
Yeah.
Karl Freund, great visualist, maybe not the greatest storyteller. So again, there's a collaboration here. The reason why genius happens is because everyone gets in a room and what they fight about ends up being so influential that the world turns after this film is released. That being said, I also have to the fucking nerd in me has to mention the fact that while Karl Freund was not the creator of the 3-camera sitcom system, he is the one who perfects it. He's the one who perfects sitcom lighting. He is the reason why I Love Lucy looks so fucking good. It has never left syndication, and that show is old as shit. Like when you look at Cheers now, it's a little harsh. When you look at I Love Lucy, everyone looks good. Even people who don't look good look good. And Carl Freund is the reason. He perfected 3-camera sitcoms, everybody. He's the reason why they look the way they look and the system works the way it works. It's pretty incredible that he can have that breadth of a creative influence on the industry. So, all right, we've talked about it enough. We even mentioned it in passing. But as we hit the near hour mark here, let us discuss the one, the only, Bela the Hitman Lugosi, Gina. My favorite story about Bela Lugosi comes from the Dracula set. They were in the midst of starting to film one of the endless parlor scenes. And before cameras roll, Lugosi is off in a corner, staring at himself in a mirror, throwing his hand out in his weird fork hands and bellowing, "I am Dracula." And at one point, one of the cast members is like, "What the fuck are you doing? Like, this is a movie. You know you're not Dracula, right? Like, this is just a movie. You don't have to put that much into it." And the crazy thing is, nobody else on this movie, with the exception of Carl Fry, who drinks himself to death, I think, nobody else in this movie goes on to do anything but Bela Lugosi. Bela Lugosi is Dracula. Again, he's default Dracula. Whatever his thing was, it worked, whether it was on stage, whether it was in this movie, or The Black Cat, or Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein. Bela Lugosi has something, and it just is what it is. You can't take it away from him. He just works on camera.
Yeah, I mean, nobody watches this movie because, this is my favorite version of Mina Harker.
Yes, absolutely true.
And the problem is for better or for worse, like, he was typecast as I mean, he was literally like, I mean, we all know the story about how he showed up for a role in Plan 9 from Outer Space, still wearing the Dracula cape, even though he's supposed to be playing an alien.
Right.
And then he was literally buried in it. Like he just like this was, this ended up being, a more of a burden for him of being, immediately associated with this role. So he did almost exclusively horror for the rest of his career. I mean, he did a little bit of comedy, but again, he was basically was parodying Count Dracula.
And I think some of it has to do with the fact that, like, when he came to this country from Hungary, which he was chased out of because he was a socialist and it was an acting union organizer of actors. He comes to Germany, he just like starts to learn stage parts phonetically. And as such, like, he has a very defined way of speaking, and it's just going to define him one way or the other. And as a dashing romantic foreigner, he absolutely fits. And then you put him in other things and he doesn't fit as well. And there just wasn't a breadth of roles for him to play. So he was always playing the heavy. He was always playing someone who had dark secrets or a macabre nature about him, or was tapped into the supernatural. And yeah, it stifles him. And there's a lot of hay to be made about, he turned down doing Frankenstein. I don't think he was in the place in his career to turn down doing shit. If depending on who you read and who you believe, he screen tested for Frankenstein. And when people saw his Frankenstein, they're like, there's no way this is going to work. We need somebody who has a completely different body type, who seems put together of different parts. And that's where you get that's where you get Boris Karloff into this. And yet Lugosi goes on to play Frankenstein at one point. But in the continuity of that, he's been blinded. So when people walk around as Frankenstein with their arms extended, that's not from any of the previous Frankenstein movies. That's from the one Frankenstein movie Lugosi is playing the monster because he's blind. So That's how fucking influential he is. Like, even in a role he doesn't originate, he ends up changing to the point where you say, act like Frankenstein. People put their hands up, corpse still straight in front of them, and think that's Frankenstein. That's Lugosi, baby. It's fucking nuts. It's crazy. He had so much influence and just was not appreciated in his time. And you see a picture of him from like 1921. I urge everyone to do that.
Oh yeah, get you a piece of young Bela Lugosi.
Oh fuck, man, he was hot. He was just hot, and I don't think he's as hot by the time he hits 31 Dracula, but he's just compelling.
He's doing a lot with virtually nothing.
Right.
Like the script for this might as well have been like a single piece of paper.
And he's just eating off of every line. He is not late for his shift at the cunt factory. He just is serving.
Oh, I thought for the fact that shirt would probably be banned from our TeePublic store. That would make
I would love to lay claim, but
shirt.
I am repeating a TikTok thing. So
I don't think I've ever heard you say that word. My goodness.
No, and we'll see if it stays in the episode. It'll either be right up front or all the way at the end or right where I said it. But yeah, he just makes this all come alive. And, you make that big of a splash. It's great because people will forever know your name. You make this kind of a splash, people forever know your name because of Dracula. And it's a double-edged sword in a time where, people just weren't allowed to be different things to different people. They didn't have that many avenues to understand you.
Right. And if Dracula as a movie is not the most, exciting movie in the world, you could still, it is just so influential that the better version of it still lifts a lot of things from it. You've got this sort of uncanny aspect of Dracula's castle, like where water runs the wrong way, and there's just this like weird vibe to it. You've got Gary Oldman's like extremely thick Eastern European accent, which he's doing Bela Lugosi. He's the physicality of the role, he's taken in a completely different direction, but the voice is 100% Lugosi.
Yes. The one thing though, I think the newer versions seem to miss, like they put in the wolves, they put in the bats, but they don't put in enough possums falling off of coffins. You know what I mean?
You think about it, it would be likely that if his coffin was just you stuck in the lower level of like a castle, there probably would be like raccoons and possums and shit just kind of hanging out.
Yeah.
They're scavengers. They could smell dead things.
I think they were going for they're even bigger, meaner rats, but they don't.
There was definitely a possum. Yeah.
Yeah. It just doesn't quite work. But someone described Browning as irrational, but compelling. And it's really good. Like shit doesn't make sense, but it makes you lean towards the screen, not lean away from it.
It shouldn't make sense because you are dealing with otherworldly things.
Right. And I would tell people what happens in the movie, but everyone knows what happens in this movie, even if they don't. Like,
oh yeah,
it's
literally like barely an hour long.
Right.
Like the crazy thing is when and if you're looking for them, a lot of times Criterion Channel has them. It is crazy how short these movies are, and they managed to tell a complete story. Listen, is Dracula pretty bare bones as a story? Yeah, it's very stripped down because again, it is a theatrical version. It is a cinematic version of a play version of a book. Right. So you get just more stripping down, and then again, not to belabor a point, there was a lot of stuff they could not do, a lot of things they couldn't even imply because of the Hays Code restrictions.
Yeah.
So, Lugosi and Dwight Fry were giving 150%. Everybody else did about 30%. But I think as far as, what Browning was doing, what Lugosi and Fry were doing, they were doing a lot with very little.
Right. I do want that to have somebody in my life that will tell me the sun's gone down. You can get out of your box now. I would love that.
I just want to enter a room with just this maniacal grin, like Dwight Fry. That's such a great shot. And like I said, Nicholas Hoult just manages to perfectly capture it in Renfield.
Yeah. And yet, like before Renfield shows up, Dracula's driving his own carriage. Like he's doing a lot. He's watching his pennies so the dollars can watch himself. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
He does a lot.
He's multitasking.
He's multitasking.
We love a
ladies.
We love a multitasker. He's in a plural marriage.
Yes.
Yeah, he's very free thinking.
But he also sets boundaries. He's like, no, this one's mine. And they're all like, all right, but we were going to give him a hot BJ like in Ghostbusters.
He was kind of into it. I am aware that he was kind of into it, but
who wouldn't be into it? That's not the problem here, but I'm working on a real estate deal that can only be completed if this guy's under my thrall and I'm making me bugs. I do love when Renfield is going up to the castle and there's that bat flying in front of the horses. Like the bats are your first GPS. They're just like, I don't remember the way to the castle, but luckily for me, the bat does. I love that every spooky house is playing off this movie. They all get cobwebs after. And I also, when we talked about like why people are compelled by this, I just don't think they were used to getting eye fucked the way Dracula.
Yeah, no, I had to try to think of it in context of what they had seen by that point. And again, most of the time, if you were going to the cinema at this time period, you were getting an insipid musical. You weren't getting like, here's the European sex machine coming in to steal your lady.
When the title came up, like they're on board the Vesta, I'm like, are you telling me that this entire summer year of a boat with a Dracula on it was wrong? They're all giving me accurate versions, and the 1931 is like, I don't know what a Demeter is.
We don't have it in the budget to give the boat a name that has more than 5 letters.
Like it's just a Vesta. That's fine. The people will get it. You don't have to be accurate. And then when they open up they find a bunch of shadows of dead bodies strapped to the wheel and shit. And the police open up the door to the hull. Dwight Fry's about to, and he's doing that weird laugh. He's like, and
again, like every version of Renfield has done, it's been a take on that. Of course, you've got the best one, of course, is Peter McNichol and Dracula Dead and Loving It.
Right.
Which that and the scene in which Jonathan stakes Lucy and gets about 40 gallons of blood fire hosed into his face are really the only 2 parts of that movie worth watching. But Peter McNichol just is having the time of his fucking life playing Renfield.
He's making the most of the situation because
he knows that script's a non-starter, so he's just like, whatever. I'm not here for a long time. I'm here for a good time.
Exactly. I do find it odd that the authorities who open that door and hear that laugh aren't more concerned about the way Renfield laughs.
They're just kind of like, huh, that's strange.
Oh, that's odd.
I say, what's all this then?
Yeah, maybe you should see a doctor or something, like fucking ACAB for sure. Meanwhile, the Count's just strolling the streets of London town now with a top hat on. and immediately murders the girl who's like, flores para los muertos.
Say your flower.
And he's like, I think you could do with 4 gallons less blood in your body, and just takes her to town. And why he isn't introduced with London Calling over that title card is beyond me. Producers really cheap.
Or Panic in the Streets of London.
Right. Yeah. Give me something. Come on. And so, like, the box of the theater where Seward introduces Count to Mina, Lucy, and Harker is the same sets from the Phantom of the Opera, which stood forever until it was torn down and replaced by Super Nintendo World, Gina.
Of course.
It's where Bowser's Castle is. It's where they filmed Phantom of the Opera, and they're like, we don't need that shit anymore.
Well, they need the atmosphere.
That's right. Yes. Now it stands where the shower scene from Psycho was filmed, is where Bowser's Castle is. More importantly, the bathroom. But I do love that Lucy has this like jaunty rhyme about haunted houses. Like, more people should have haunting rhymes about a house you just moved into.
Absolutely.
Drac flies into Lucy's room. You can we've talked a lot about grips moving branches just beyond the frame, but no, I just don't. The bat does not work for me in this movie.
Oh my god, it's so bad. It's charming.
It's only moving because it's bouncing, and it just looks too
definitely
jaunty.
Like an underpaid, if paid at all, stagehand just off screen with that thing hanging off a stick.
And Bella comes in with those fork hands, and when he gets to her pillow, they don't move, they don't bend, they're just stick straight in that, and it's a crazy looking thing. He's acting with his whole body. It's his commitment which brings you over to his interpretation, in my mind.
Yeah.
I do love when Seward does a postmortem on Lucy, and it's in front of a whole fucking audience that's practically standing room only. Like, it's Showtime at the Apollo level crowds for this autopsy. It's fucking nuts. But of course, that draws the attention of Dr. Van Helsing, who believes in vampires and thinks like he can gather some proof amongst the constant a growing pile of dead bodies that are going to start showing up. They'll provide all the hints he needs. And then it's not too much longer after that Mina gets her own visit from the Count. But the thing is with Mina is she's a sipper, right? You don't guzzle that bad boy. She's a sipping lady. You just get a little from her and drag it out over time.
Yeah, just you want to make it last.
Yeah. This is where I wrote the note. Wolf Harker is the softest boy who ever lived.
Oh, he's
fucking useless.
Just complete and utter limp dick, and just in literal and metaphorical sense.
I mean, later on, he's like, "Oh, that bat's gonna get in your hair," and you're like, I don't think that bat is scared of you.
No.
That bat is not afraid.
What are you going to do? My word it away?
Yeah, he's like, oh, it might get in your hair. And like, oh boy, he's not competition. Really.
No.
Should just walk away. Thing is, Gina, if you're a vampire and you don't want people to notice that you don't show up in mirrors, when someone shows you a mirror, don't smack it out of their fucking hand. Gaslight them into thinking they're wrong. I see myself in the mirror. What's your fucking problem?
I mean, I do like in the Coppola version how he just kind of like breaks the mirror with his mind.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many times I wished I could do that. Just like, look at my reflection, kind of growl, and then like turn my head away and the whole thing just shatters. Exactly.
One of those bad boys.
Exactly.
Here's another difference between the English and the Spanish language version is when Mina gets called outside for sip two. In the English language version, she just kind of saunters outside like it's another nice night. And in the Spanish language version, she's called, she's hypnotized, she's compelled mentally. And the English language version is like, I love a garden at night. There's nothing scary about it.
No.
But ultimately, he gets her for the 3 count. She starts to get afraid of crosses. They're like, we don't know what to do. Seward's fucking useless. Harker's fucking useless. Van Helsing's like, you know what we'll do? We'll follow Renfield as he breaks out of this mental asylum for the 50th fucking time. And he goes to Carfax Abbey and you're like, oh, Dracula's in Carfax. You knew that. He bought the place. His name's on the fucking deed, y'all. But they go in there and Dracula's like, I don't have time for you. He chokes out Renfield. Does he throw him down the stairs? You don't really he just screams off camera like, ah! And you're like, oh, that dude's dead. That's all you get. And then they retreat down to the cellar. They each get in their individual coffins. I like that you never see anyone try to get out of a coffin out of the ground because there's no cool way to do that, Gina.
No.
And then, Van Helsing stakes Dracula off screen. And then Harker and Mina are like, that was crazy. You want to go to TJ Fridays or something?
Yeah, like just Dracula just kind of lets out this, that was a spicy meatball.
Yeah, it's a
little
underwhelming.
I think anticlimactic would be the word here. Whereas in and again, not to belabor a point, but the Coppola version, you have this like epic horse chase and they're chasing him from like England back to the old country and he's got minions helping and then Mina has to stake him and then cut off his fucking head.
Yeah.
Because otherwise the curse won't break.
Right. And here it's just like, here's this little tappy tap in your heart.
Just got little pokey poke. Night. No big deal. Didn't even get my hands dirty.
Yeah. So, I mean, you either die by getting siphoned off by Dracula, or I guess you get choked out on a staircase. What say you, Gina?
Oh, I want to. Yeah, I would definitely take Dracula's way out. I mean, I get my entire blood supply drained out of my body and put back 3 times a week anyway. So, what's a single bite and just and leaving me to die? It's fine. It's fine.
I'm right where with you. If I have the option, like he's not, I'm going to be like the flower girl. I'm not coming back. He's not like, I need this guy around. Like I need him talking.
I mean, if I had a preference, I would want to come back as a vampire myself. Mm-hmm. But if not, then just go ahead and treat me like the Golden Corral buffet.
But do you want to come back like this kind of vampire where one person's in charge and he's like, no, you don't get to drink tonight? It seems like,
no, I don't.
I want to be a free range vampire, not with these motherfuckers.
But also, I want like I want teeth and cool eyes too.
Yeah. Josh Hollis does all of our artwork. Go to joshhollis.com. Go to Revenge Body Memphis at bandcamp.com to get this remix and all our other themes. Gina, where can people find you on this here internets?
I write about television and movies at thespool.net. I have a Substack. It's GinaWatchesThings.substack.com. And I am on Blue Sky and Instagram and TikTok under Gina Does Things.
Do today, people. Check it out. Rate and review us on iTunes or wherever your podcatcher of choice is. We love to see it. Come join us on Patreon, where we do fun extra bonus stuff. And of course, we're on all the various socials with the exception of Twitter. Fuck that joint. And that just about does it. Next week for Kill the Rockstar, guess what? It's time to get hit up with one of the masters of horror doing a music video. That's right. Toby Hooper's version of a nuclear wasteland of some sort. We're going to be talking about Dancing with Myself by Billy Idol. And we got a fun special guest, which is we don't usually do for off weeks, but I think you're going to like every single part of it. Do it today. Of course, the body count will continue for myself and for Gina. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Well, greetings and salutations, Internet. It's your old pal, Patrick Hamilton, coming to you once again from Carfax Abbey, the one office that has a labradoodle who's working on a crinkly toy that I did not know was in the office. Oswald. Oz, come here, buddy. Come here. Right. Hey, right. No, bring that. Bring that to me. Bring that to me. Oh, my God. Hold on.
We got some real Hound from Hell situation here, folks.